It's nefarious, man. Like, the brain works in fucked up ways.
The mind is one of the most deceiving, manipulative pieces of equipment, flesh, human bodies on earth. I never have trusted my brain.
All of that weight lives in your head, and you are the decision maker.
Psychology of Entrepreneurship.
Hi, it's Ronsley. If this is your first volume, welcome. This is a weekly series where I go inside the mind of an entrepreneur, artist, athlete, academic, to decipher what is the psychology of our decisions. Today is Addendum week, which is special for many reasons. Every addendum allows you to hear what my lines of questions look like. Every addendum feels like I put more of myself out there, more of my voice. And also, I suppose every addendum allows us to go like 1 week ahead, which is actually really cool. In Addendum 3, we go back to the start, where we interview this person.
My name is Philip McKernan. I'm the founder of One Last Talk. I'm a coach, and I deliver and run retreats all over the world for entrepreneurs and leaders who are seeking clarity about their present and about their future.
In that volume, I mentioned that I attended Philip's Brave Mind event in Boulder, Colorado. This conversation is what came out the day after I understood some things for the very first time. Some of those things you'll hear in this interview. But what I hope you hear is how much we are living less with our heart and more with our minds. In the last month, for context, I've moved house, ran over 200 kilometers, have done about 20 yin yoga sessions, read 9 books, produced 10 podcast episodes, hired a new team member, interviewed 14 people, had strategy calls, sales calls, feedback calls, launched We Are podcast for the 5th year, and confirmed all the speakers. And here's the kicker. Recalling all the things I did over the last month makes me realize how much I actually remembered before I needed to start looking at all the apps, the calendar, and the notifications I received. When a close friend, Chris, took a few minutes from his day to check on how I was doing after I told him I was having a hard time. 2. Dave and Mike and Philip, yes, the same Philip in this addendum, got on a 1-hour call to hold space for me. 3. A message from a team member, Corinne, that read just like this. Just wanted to say how happy I am to be part of this team. Seriously, this wasn't the direction I saw my career going when I started in music journalism, but it's seriously everything I never knew I always wanted to do, if that makes sense. It's all about the heart. Anyway, I hope that gives you context for what you are about to hear. Kind of want to start with the 2 days. I think a lot of who I hung out with over the last 3 days have been at the 2 days that you ran, which is Brave Mind. A 2-day. So here's what's really interesting, right? I went home yesterday or to the Airbnb, and I said to Rochelle, it's really interesting for me as a marketer because my job is to put what people do into words, and it's extremely difficult to put into words what you do, and not even on camera. Like I'm usually I'm able to encapsulate stuff. I couldn't. Do you get that a lot?
When Pauline came back from this 7-day Brave Soul retreat in Ireland, one of our clients said to her, finally you've stepped in as a client. Now you're going to be able to explain the work. And she said, I had an amazing week. I learned a lot about myself, and I got very clear about who I am, who I'm meant to be in this world, who I can be in this world. And yet I am more confused than ever how to actually explain the work. So I get that all the time. And everybody from Clay Bear to Una, who talks about, elevator speeches or your perfect intro or whatever it happens to be, and various different, variations of that. And I used to obsess about trying to define who I was or what the work was or what the work meant to me in a short little snapshot. And then finally I got so sick and tired of attempting that because I'd picked something out that sounded kind of cool, maybe resonated with some people, but didn't resonate with me or vice versa. And I basically just stopped doing it. And then I just said, I'm just going to allow other people to decide what it is for me, or what it is for them, I should really say, which from a marketing standpoint leaves you open to people misunderstanding, misrepresenting you. But the one thing I did get last night was, which reduced me to tears in the bar, literally, was Hector, who flew in from Mexico.
Was on my table.
He was at your table. He, the reason he was here is he saw somebody who's done, deeper work than Bravemind over a slightly longer period of time. And he said it is absolutely evident how they have changed, how they've shifted, and how everybody around them sees it. And he said, I simply wanted a part of what I saw in my friend Ricardo. And that's what's happening, is people are coming to us because they see a shift in somebody and they go, what's going on with you? And typically, sometimes people say, oh, I've changed, and they kind of take credit and they want to just like own it, and they've done it themselves. They smoked something, read something, took something. But other people sometimes say, listen, I've done some work with this guy, McKernan. My life has shifted in some capacity. I feel at peace. I'm clear. Things are happening. I've aligned a bit better. And that energy attracts other people. So that's the kind of referrals we're getting. But no, it's a communication challenge we have, for sure.
So forget about forget about everyone in general that have come. For you, what is Bravemind? If you had to put it, I don't want it in one sentence or a couple of words or any of that, but if you had to try and put words around it, what would you say it is?
I think it's a place to come and begin a journey of discovering who you are. And I would actually probably replace that, discover who you really are. Because so many of us walk through life being told who we are, what we are, where we can be, what we can do, what we cannot do, what we're capable of doing, what we have the right to do, and so on and so forth. And one of the challenges is that's either societal voices, it's our parents telling us, but a lot of us have these internal dialogues and narratives that we hold so tightly onto. And I would say that Bravemind is a place to come and let go of everything you know, everything you feel you are, to begin to really look and see, is that actually even fucking real? Is that actually the truth? Are you really a Catholic? Are you really a Christian? Are you really a Buddhist? Are you really an engineer? Are you really a dentist? Is that what you're meant to do? And is that what you want to do for the rest of your life? And it's a place to come and beginning to question the most important things in our lives so that we don't compound them for many, many, many years to wake up one day having significant life regrets. It's a space to come, a sacred, safe place to come and ask the questions of ourselves that we typically avoid consciously or otherwise.
So what about someone who is in a position where they don't even realize, because something that we spoke about yesterday a little bit was how draining it is to convince someone to look at their own stuff because they're holding on to that identity so much and have all these justifications and reasons. And I suppose from the outside looking in, you can see it, but we do it to ourselves in this. It's quite amazing how hypocritical it is. The question is, you could quite easily have reduced the number of people in the room, had them do certain exercise, because a bunch of us would have done anything. I can't remember the last time I was so present for 2 full days. For me, it was incredible. But you could limit the amount of people. It would drain you less. What's the deal? What's up with that, McKernan?
It's how to filter them. Mm-hmm. We've tried multiple ways, and inevitably, at Brave Soul 2 years ago, there's a lady who was just really, really challenging. And yet when she spent an hour with Pauline on the phone in advance and went through the questionnaire, Pauline asked her all the questions, she seemed open, she seemed coachable, she seemed vulnerable, she seemed willing to be courageous. And yet she gets to Ireland and it's just a different person. It's almost like she manipulated her way through our filtering process and ended up getting there and then became kind of almost defiant and closed. So would I like to remove those people to a greater extent? Yes. Should we eliminate those people if we could find them and we knew how to find them? Could we eliminate them from the work? Yes, but I think in another way they serve a purpose. And the purpose they serve is to remind the rest of us how far we've come, because we were all that person at one point or another. And there's also this hope that in an environment like that, they may shift. Or when you do an exercise in a room where you say, with your permission, can I do something? And they often or always say yes. You say, by a raise of hands in the room, how closed do you think this person really is? Are they closed or open? And that might shift them. At least that's my hope. So I think that's the rationalization, the justification piece. The personal piece for me is I don't want to let them go, because I was that person. I know what it feels like to sit there and tell yourself a story that isn't true, to find out. And there was men and women that have challenged me directly or indirectly along my journey that allowed me to awaken. Sometimes we come to it on our own. Other times we need to be kicked in the ass. What I have found in the past is that there's 2 or 3 people that have left that room last night after the 2 days, and they will never step foot in anything I ever do again. They have written me off. They completely dislike. I could just feel the anger. And yet they passively smiled and kind of gave me a token hug at the end. They're so angry at me, like so angry at me, because they can't not be angry. Because if they cannot shoot the messenger, they have to listen to the message. So what they do is they sniper me, they take me out, and then they can go on every single day telling themselves the same story, that everything's okay, that you're on the right path, yet suffering deep down inside their own souls. And everyone else around them suffers with them. So I don't know how to filter them out. We've tried. What we have is Brave Soul and Brave Heart. There's more filtering that people have to go through. Brave Mind, we've allowed people, it's open to the public.
Right.
And that maybe is a problem for us.
Well, I'm not saying it's a problem. It's just interesting because of the kind of work you're doing. And you said to me before the 2 days, you'd see how much energy I put into the thing, and it's crazy. I've never seen someone be so present, even delivering. Interestingly enough, but one of the things you say, which I found really interesting, and you said it in the interview before the 2 days, and you highlighted it definitely on the 2 days, was any answer you're after, go back into your past, and you'll find anything you're looking for, everything you're looking for, and all the answers are there. But everyone out there says, don't drive your car looking in the rearview mirror, don't look at the wake of a boat, and, you just look forward. And that, you think that because the narrative is like that, people might finding it hard to look into their past, and they're kind of going, I should only look at my future and I should go from there?
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of looking in the rear view mirror, the analogy, and driving the car, because it's dangerous, precarious, and it's not going to work. And inevitably you're going to crash. Unless, of course, you're in a self-drive car, which is not that far away. What I'm asking people to do is to take 6 days, 5 days, 2 days out of their life and consider it on a one-off basis to see what's there. So in Brave Soul, for example, the 7-day experience, the first 2 days are all about your past. We don't spend 7 days about your past, nor do we bring people back to Brave Soul every single year, nor do we recommend they do it every quarter. It's just we do a deeper dive into your past to show you. Then we look at your present, and then what we do is we look at a bridge between the past and the present, and we allowed you to decide. We don't tell you. We don't say, hey, Ronsley, do you see why this is the way it is today? Do you see? We don't. We just go, have a look at the past, compare it to your present, and ask these certain questions that relates to the bridge. You join the dots if they're there. And every single person that's ever done it goes, oh, holy shit, I now see it clearer than I've ever seen it before. And the reason the pattern continues is because they've been aware it's there. They just didn't know why it was there. They didn't understand its origin. They didn't know why it was created. So the pattern has been created over many, many years. But again, then we look forward. Then, at the back end of that particular experience, then we start to vision into the future, and then it's about forward focus. All I'm asking people to do is to take a few days out of 365 days a year, a few days out of the 7 years, 20 years, 45 years of their life and look back. I don't think that's too big an ask. And I think if people could understand intellectually and emotionally what they would get from that, I think they would do it in a heartbeat. But people don't see the value in it because we're in a society that either spiritually wants us to live in the now or the future. Okay? And we're very future focused as human beings. And I think part of the reason we do that is because we want to avoid the past.
Professor and co-founder of the Entrepreneurial Mind, Dr. Jeff Cornwall, states that beyond understanding if entrepreneurship is the right path, self-assessment helps entrepreneurs better define the ideal size and scope of the business before it even begins, by integrating their own financial, family, and other personal goals into the mix.
Interesting. So I don't know how many of us got that to stop to look at the past for answers. And I'm not disagreeing it because I recently started doing a lot of work on my past. And crazy how much stuff was hidden that I didn't even know, like I didn't even think about, didn't even remember intellectually, but my body remembered because when I heard it, my body reacted immediately. And I kind of, because you spoke about that a lot yesterday, about the difference between intellectualizing something versus emotionally feeling something. So, and what I feel is that those words mean different things to different people, and they don't really understand what you mean by those words. So I'd like you to kind of spend some time explaining that, if you don't mind.
Well, I think we live in a world today that, and I'm not sure if we covered this when we first chatted, but regardless, I'll say it again. But we live in a world today that we're consuming information like the speed of light, and we've never had as much information, and we've never had such accessibility to that information. So if information was the key, we apparently live in the information world right now, or the information time or whatever. If information was the answer, then we'd all be happy. And I think the challenge is that many people are reading, books. Sometimes they're reading a book a week, 3 books a month, 2 books a month, or a book a month, or whatever it happens to be. And you might think that person is very smart, they're very intellectual, that they're doing the right thing. A lot of it is driven by scarcity. It's not driven because they're truly drawn to the book on the shelf. They're reading the book because they're afraid if they don't, they're going to miss out. And a lot of us, and by the way, when it comes to book reading, we're not reading a trashy novel that we desire to read, whether it's about rock climbing or mountain climbing or something else, because there's no value in that. It's like we almost feel like that has no value. That won't allow me to increase my business, my revenue. It won't get me closer to my passion. Therefore, reading a Stephen King novel is not going to bring me any closer. Yet, that will nurture us at a different level and give us a gap and a disconnection from the obsessive nature of searching for what's next, and allow us to create creativity in our lives. But the challenge with reading and consuming information is that we're too busy consuming the next thing, and we haven't allowed the thing we're consuming go from information to knowledge to wisdom, and wisdom to awareness. So how many people have you met in the last 12 months says, I read this book, it changed my life? And all you got to do is say, great, how? I'm going to change my life. And I go, great, how? What did you do with it? Oh, I haven't done it yet, but it's amazing. Great. What have you done with it? I think we'd be better off reading 3 books a year, taking those books that deeply resonate with us, putting it on a bookshelf and rotating them, taking them down, reading a chapter, bringing that, testing it in our lives, implementing it in our lives to see if it feels organic and intuitive to who we are. And implementing that over a period of time, and then taking 1 or 2 books the next year as opposed to reading 52 books. And then the subject matter of some of those books, you ask somebody, what do you think? And they go, oh, I know that concept. And they can rattle it off intellectually. And then they feel they've done the work, and they're on to the next book. So a lot of people have a very strong intellectual grasp of spirituality, of human connection, of relationships, of love, of parenting. But they don't feel it emotionally. They've just filled their head up with it. And the same way that I remember when we were about to have our first child, Charlie, And I remember getting to Pauline's nightstand, and she had 6 books, all on parenting. And it drove me absolutely insane. And I'll tell you why it drove me insane, because my belief is she is designed to be able to bring a human into this world and care for him or her. It doesn't mean she cannot get advice and stuff from somebody else. And the second part of this is I have had the honor and the privilege and the misfortune to meet a lot of authors who have written books about X, and they don't believe in it. They don't even live it. They're not even close to the person that they've pretended to be in that book. So read a book with an open mind and an open heart, but don't attach yourself to the belief that what this person has written means they live it. And then someone says, well, hang on a second, even if that person's out of integrity, even if that person stole money, if they give me one nugget of wisdom, then I can implement that in my life. What's wrong with that, Philip? Well, here's what happens when you take that one nugget and you model that one element of that person's lives. You're taking all the energy of who they are with that one nugget. You can't have one without the other. And the one thing you and I have spoken about before is, you know, we as human beings, particularly entrepreneurs, have the worst goddamn heroes in our lives. And Steve Jobs is an example. I'm not saying he's a bad, evil person and we shouldn't be inspired by anything he has ever done in the past. However, I meet people all the time saying, I want to be the next Steve Jobs. And I go, great. So you want to be all of him. You want to have his personal, no, not his personal life. And I don't want to die with cancer. And I don't want to do that. I just want to like his business success and his ability to be able to dream and design and everything else. Great. It doesn't work like that. You can't just take the piece of the pie that you feel is representative of success. Because you end up getting the other part of it. Go beyond even that, and you think, okay, what did Steve Jobs actually do? Okay, he took an idea that already existed, and he sexed it up, he marketed it, he presented it to the world in a way that we all comprehended and got it. But in 20 or 30 or 40 years, he may be well recognized for the guy that brought the tool to the table that disconnected us as humans more than any other tool in the history of mankind, meaning the mobile phone, the smartphone, the iPhone. I'm not saying he's a bad person. People go bananas when I talk about this stuff. They get so defensive. All I'm saying is just be careful what you wish for, because I know that I ended up getting some of those things and I wasn't happy.
Psychology of Entrepreneurship.
The main objective of this audio project is to bring together entrepreneurs and creatives who share similar values so that they can find the courage to put out their authentic voice for the right people to hear, which allows for them to make their impact on the world. Every great movement started with a memorable speech. For access to full-length interviews, go to psychologyofentrepreneurship.com and click the button.
That's a trend through all these interviews of everyone reaching to a point that they thought they wanted to be at and getting there and going, well, this is not what I wanted. You spoke about the people kind of wanting this element of someone else, another person, and it comes to mind how we try to model different things of different human beings, different experiences, different people, different whatever. But someone who we know commonly has written a book called Alter Ego, and I'm going to be interviewing him, and I find it interesting how I find a battle inside me when I'm consuming Alter Ego. Hear me out. I think it's a great analogy. I think it's it allows you to do things outside of yourself and take things not personally, and it's a great tool. But I feel that the alter ego, the mask that we put on, also could be a tendency of taking us down a slippery slope. Now, the reason I'm bringing this up is because yesterday or the day before, you mentioned how, well, this is who I am. there's no difference. Like, how do you turn it off? Is what someone asked you, how do you turn it off? And you're like, no, I don't. This is who I am, and I can resonate entirely exactly with who, like, that this is who I am. Is there validity in separating yourself from the world and allowing you to show up in a different way in certain circumstances?
Well, there's validity in it. I'm not sure I agree with it, but it's. I think the challenge for people is if they just start pretending, wearing a mask, adapting to almost have a different personality, a different attitude, to try to show up differently. I feel that the challenge with that is it might yield you short-term results. But what ends up happening is then you start to do that more and more and more, and you start to become further, you start moving further away from who you are. So I see it as being potentially very dangerous. People say to me, for example, I say, how's your confidence? Just not very scientific, on a scale of 1 to 10. And they go, oh, in work it's a 9, but when I'm at home it's a 2. And my obnoxious statement to that, or follow-up, is, who are you, fucking Batman? Mm-hmm. So the problem is that, and then we drive into the driveway, and we either get out of our uniform, take our mask off, or we check ourselves and say, right, we're not in the office anymore. Now we're at home, and we're almost trying to change our personalities. We walk to the door to greet our kids. And I think it's an unfortunate reality for many people, as they feel that they have to become something different in order to achieve something that they want. And the example that I used in the last couple of days is the girl who split up with her husband, hadn't been on a date for many, many years, had been on a blind date, I think since she was 18 or 20 or something, and went home that day and dolled herself up, is what she said. She dolled herself up by putting lots of makeup on, putting on her dress, doing her hair and whatever, and off she went to this blind date. And whatever happened, they figured out within the first 15 minutes this wasn't going to work. But they said, listen, we've got a nice meal, a nice restaurant, why don't we just hang out? Sure. And she said to him at one point, it's like, do you mind me asking you, what do you look for in somebody? And he goes, well, my number one thing is I don't like makeup. And she just goes, oh my God. He goes, what? He goes, oh, I don't mean to offend you. He goes, no, it's the first time I put makeup on in probably 2 years. I put it on because I thought I needed to be in the dating scene, to find somebody. So if you think about the whole concept of dressing up and dolling ourselves up, I get it, to go out to meet the right guy, but eventually he's going to see you naked. Eventually he's going to see you without your, and vice versa. So you end up having to look in the mirror or look across the room and see the person that has pretended to be something in order to get you into a relationship or in the door or into bed. But eventually you're going to have to see each other for who you are. So I don't know the book, and I haven't read the book, The Alter Ego, so I don't want to tackle the book, but I think the idea of a persona, I think it has great merits in certain circumstances. So if I'm about to run into a building and it's on fire, if I'm about to run into a building and with a gun, or run into a building with a guy in a gun, by creating a persona in a very short part of my life, would it help me? Maybe, but I think it could be very dangerous.
I should have said that I wanted to know how much it is about us wanting to put on a persona and not necessarily refer to the book in particular, because I was interested to know, because a lot of you mentioned heroes, and that's the reason why I arrived at that question, is we have heroes, and that's why superhero movies is one of the quickest growing franchises or movie scenes around, is because we can all relate to it, or we all somehow feel connected to a character. And I know yours is Indiana Jones. How useful are those personas? Because in my opinion, what we did over the last 2 days is remove all those personas and actually look at who we really are. So yeah.
Indiana Jones was my hero, but he represented everything I felt and believed I was not. He was good looking. He was outgoing. He didn't give a shit, yet he cared deeply for humanity. He was adventurous. He was brave. So I looked to him because I saw the parts in myself, or parts of him that I did not recognize, see, or want to believe that were contained within me. And to some extent, that's what happens in relationships. We end up seeing something, this whole idea of the opposites attract. We see something in somebody that either we don't believe we have or we cannot recognize in ourselves. And the opposites attract. The challenge in relationships, on a side note, is we spend the next 5, 10, or 15 years trying to change that person to see the world like we do. So we end up trying to control the person and control the outcome. So Indiana Jones was simply somebody that I believed I was not and wanted to be, because he represented something that was kind of cool and almost unattainable for me. And what I've found out over the last number of years is that and I tried to be him. I tried to show up like him. I tried to be cool. I tried to be outgoing. I tried to be good looking. I tried to care. I tried to not give a shit. And it didn't really work. And as I moved away from the idea of Indiana Jones and holding him on a pedestal and living up to that, and started to become who I was, and actually to some extent the opposite of that, like letting go, allowing my weakness to emerge, allowing people to see that I fart and I poo and I pee and I whatever. I've never felt more at home in my own skin, ever. And I've no interest in being Indiana Jones. I just want to be me, because I want to be my own fucking hero. I don't want and I don't need anyone to see me as a hero. I don't want anyone to see me as a hero. But within myself, I want to be my own hero of my own life. That's it. I don't need a fucking cape. I don't need a mask. I don't need to learn how to fly. I don't need to be able to move boulders and turn metal into liquid. And I think the hero thing that we watch almost removes this possibility, and almost it creates this idea indirectly that we're further from ourselves than we can imagine. Many events are unconsciously designed this way. You go to an event, you leave feeling worse about yourself. You get fired up and inspired, but you come out the other end, and as the dust settles, you feel inadequate. And then you get addicted to the feeling you had in that room, so you need to go back. That to me is disgusting.
I am in awe of what space does to a sentence once it's said out loud. But I'm curious, and I think the microphone will pick up, Travis, the characteristics that Philip mentioned about Indiana Jones. I feel like he's got all of them. Do you agree, disagree, based on how much you know so far?
He's better looking. I think it's funny because it's everything that he felt that he wasn't in Indiana Jones, but when I see Philip and I get the chance to work with him, like I see those characteristics because they, and I don't know you 30 years ago if you've always had them, but that courage, the caring deeply, but not caring at all. Those are the things that make your work hard to explain because you embody those things. And then you bring that out. Like you have a way of telling someone to shut up where they feel like you love them more when you tell it to them. And so I think that it's an interesting kind of irony that he was your hero because you lacked those things, but actually I think you embody them as a real life human and not a fictional character and not just in your work, but in your life. And I think that's a real powerful part of it, knowing you a little bit as a father, a little bit as a husband, that those are characteristics you embody, and I see them in your son and your daughter and in your wife and yeah, I do. It's interesting. I think it's a pretty cool thing that you highlighted there because they are here and they do exude out of you. Yeah. So thank you.
I think the thing for me is one of the challenges for me, and I'm just on a personal level, leaving my work aside, is I get a tremendous amount of judgment in this world. And like a tremendous amount. And I suppose for me is like many other people, I mean, I want to be liked, I want to be loved. I think if I had an opportunity just to share one thing with the world or ask the world to consider one thing of me, before I died is just to be open to the fact that I love people more than many people love themselves. And the suffering that we create within our own minds, within our own hearts, and with our own souls, that's my job, is to name that, shine a light on that, reduce that, eliminate that if I can. But I think people sometimes think that the way I am is because I care less about humanity. It's the complete opposite. I care so much for people that I'm willing for them to hate me to get them to a better place.
You're the hero for long enough that you become the villain, just so that they can experience something that they've never experienced before and hate you while they're going through that. And I think that's why it's so difficult to explain what you do, because the only way someone can experience it is by feeling how much you actually love. And I think that's, for me, the highlight. And I couldn't have put that in words so much as actually you just did. I experienced love in that room more than I have ever. I want to say that because I couldn't wrap a word around what it was, but that's what it is. And it's all from you, my friend.
Well, I think I think it's maybe maybe it's us together, but I think, again, if you want to talk about love, the place that I've experienced it more than anywhere, I think is through One Last Talk, is when someone can share something very deep about themselves, probably the greatest, in some cases, the greatest shame they've carried, the greatest regret, the most inhumane thing they've ever done, and yet receive deep acceptance by everybody else in the room other than themselves initially. I've never experienced that in my life before.
In a survey conducted by Elevate Network, 58% of professionals questioned agreed that leaders who show vulnerability are seen as authentic, with 37% also saying that they come across as more relatable.
Something else you said on the second day. I wish for each and every one of you in this room that even for a slight second or a minute or a slight period of time, you experienced love for yourself. Even if it was a fleeting moment. It was funny because the previous night it happened to me and it was fleeting and I wanted to catch it back, and the more I wanted to catch it back, the more it went away from me. But it was funny, he said it the next day. Why do we hate each other? Why do we hate ourselves? Why do we hate ourselves?
Yeah, and hate's obviously, it's a big word. And what it might do is people might turn around and say, well, I don't hate myself. But the reality is, I think for many people, when they start to get really in touch with how they feel about themselves, how they hold themselves, how they speak to themselves, how they judge themselves, the harshness in which we just hold ourselves, there's a disdain that many of us have for ourselves, our bodies, our results, our habits, our words. And it's not far from hate. And in many cases, it is absolute nothing other than hate. And I think we judge very few people as badly as we judge ourselves. And I always remember, and it is love, but the thing that I ask people to consider is, even the question I have for people is, when was the last time you experienced true, unequivocal, unwavering self-compassion, which is a beautiful doorway into a healthy love and respect for self. And I remember sitting in Toronto one day, and surprise, surprise, you just sat through Brave Mind, you saw the resistance in the room, and I had a guy sitting there, and he goes, this guy, Travis sitting across there now, but when you said this to him, and I looked at him finally, I said, I'm not doing this for the next 2 days. He goes, what am I doing? And I said, you're having these third-party conversations. Would you like to dance? Would you like to get on the dance floor? Is there anything you would like to... And he goes, yeah, I've got some issues. And I said, what's your number one challenge? He said, I procrastinate all the time in my life. And procrastination, I don't believe actually exists in the way that it's been presented to the world. Procrastination is a beautiful way that and a beautiful method of just simply beating the shit out of ourselves, or remind ourselves how bad we are, or we're ended up procrastinating on shit that we simply shouldn't be doing and our bodies just don't want to do. And eventually I said to him, tell me about your life. And he says, black kid, white neighborhood, Toronto, you know what it's like. I said, no. I'm not black. I don't live in Toronto. I have no idea what you're talking about. He said, when I grew up as a kid, I remember trying to fit in. And I was the only black kid in this neighborhood. And I remember putting white powder on my face so I would be less black. And I looked at him and I said, Tuesdays? He goes, what are you talking about? I said, you did it on Tuesdays? He goes, no, every day. I said, for how long? He said, 3 years. I started to shake there was tears in my eyes, and everyone around was just crying. All I could see was this young 12-year-old trying to fit in. And I pulled a chair into the middle of the room, and I've never done it before, and I don't think I've ever done it since. And I said, your 12-year-old self is sitting on that chair. What would you say to him? And he looks at the chair and he goes, get up, you fucking loser. You idiot. Look how stupid you are trying to fit in with bloody white paper or white powder on your face. Grow up, be a man. And I said, my friend, that is your problem. That is your challenge. You procrastinate now because you're not good enough in your own skin. And the journey for you is that you get to a point at some point in your life and you look at that chair and all you have in your heart is love and compassion for that poor little guy doing his best to fit in. And when you get there, you'll never have to worry about procrastination or anything else for the rest of your days. You gave me a gift yesterday. You said I was a healer 3 days ago. I never ever thought about that before. And in a way, that's all I want to do is heal people. That's all I've ever wanted to do. And the way to do that is through connection to self, to meaningful work, and to everybody else around us. There's no other way.
I don't know where to go from here. I'm in awe of you, Philip McKernan. Thank you for letting me experience that.
You're welcome.
I want to just mention one thing. Through the whole 2 days, I uncovered a lot of stuff for me, but there was this one question that I kept going back to and saying I didn't have an answer for it. And I was like, because I had it sorted. The question was, one thing I need to stop doing. And I'm like, I'm doing everything I want to do. Like, I'm so lucky doing it. But I took doing literally. So I went back to this question a lot. Couldn't get the answer. All the answers kind of came quite easily. And I was like, I'm open. And then just before we wound up, it hit me. The one thing I need to stop doing is hate my body. That was not even on my radar at all. I want to say thank you.
Well, that is a thank you I ain't going to accept. Not even close. Because the question is only as good as the people. The question can only go as deep as you allow it to go. And the question can only penetrate your heart or your soul if you're brave enough to allow it to go there. So with respect, thank yourself. Nobody else. Because often a question is simply a question. But what I will say is this, is that I think that's one of the many challenges is the expectations that people have in a room like that, or have on my shoulders before they even arrive. And this is maybe me trying to justify my existence. I don't think so. But that answer, what you just shared, is a game changer. I mean, that alone, forget about everything else. Because the way in which you just shared it emotionally means, like, I can just see the depth and the importance of that. And I worked with a young man years ago. His name was Shane. And Shane came to me and he wanted to talk about growing his business. And we had 6 sessions to work together. And by session 3, he finally broke down and he said, I'm lonely. And he said, I cannot believe I'm sitting in a bar, upstairs in a bar, telling you I'm lonely. I can't believe I'm embarrassed. I can't believe I'm telling another guy, particularly another Irish guy, because we don't get emotional unless we're drunk. And then we wake up the following morning pretending we didn't do it and we didn't see you. And he goes, wow, I feel so light getting my biggest issue off my chest. I'm so excited about spending the rest of our time together, focusing on me attracting a girl, the right girl into my life. And I said, well, that's great and unfortunate. And he goes, why? I said, great that you identified that's the challenge, but it's unfortunate that that's what you want to focus on because we're not going to talk about this for the rest of our time together. And he goes, I don't understand. And I said, I know, but you will eventually. We're just going to talk about you, how you show up. We're going to remove your masks. We're going to do whatever. I'm in a hotel in London a year later, and there's thousands or hundreds of people in this foyer at this event. And he walks in the front door of the hotel and I see him. And I just knew I didn't have to wave. I didn't have to stand up. I knew he'd eventually see me. And he's walking to the bar and he looks over and he goes, he comes running over, he's waving and he comes over and he walks up and goes, McKernan. He said, you're not going to believe it. And I said, what's her name? He goes, who told you? I said, you did. The minute you walked in the door 10 minutes ago. And he goes, your shit works. And I went, thanks, I think. Thanks for the surprise. And he goes, I didn't understand that. I finally figured out what I wanted, but you wouldn't help me figure it out. But we worked on everything else, which freed the landscape for me to energetically be available to somebody coming into my life. Yet his energy before that was, how do I find her? Where is she? Is she behind a boulder? Is she behind a tree? Where's my passion? Is it over the other side of the mountain? No, it's just right inside you. It's always been there. We just got to dust it down and trust that it'll come out.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Psychology of Entrepreneurship.
Coming up on the Psychology of Entrepreneurship.
Psychology of Entrepreneurship.
My name is Melissa Ambrosini and I'm a best-selling author. I've got 2 books that are out at the moment, Mastering Your Mean Girl and Open Wide. I personally believe we all have masculine and we all have feminine. And it's our duty to make sure that our masculine and our feminine is balanced. Every day, wake up and ask yourself, what will bring me the most joy and what will make today the best day ever?
Psychology of Entrepreneurship.
This is a Must Amplify production. Special thanks to every guest expert that has appeared on the show. Editing and sound design by Kelly Bonnyman, Joel Thomas, and Nemanja Bakovic. Voiceovers by Kelly Bonnyman. Guest research and content by Claire Gould and Corinne Castles. Project managed by Shannon Morrison. Produced and hosted by me, Ronsley Vaz. For more episodes and where to listen, go to mustamplify.com/POE.
Hey, it's Kaylee from Must Amplify. I'm the sound engineer for this volume of Psychology of Entrepreneurship. I'm part of the team that made this production come alive. I work as a part of a global team with our studios based in West End, Brisbane, Australia. If you would like a podcasting checklist, email me at kaylee@amplifyagency.media. That's KAILI@amplifyagency.media. We specialize in finding your voice and making sure it's heard by the right people. If you are considering whether a podcast is a good idea for your business, check out our other show on shouldistartapodcast.com. Are you still listening? Here's a little gift to you for sticking around. If entrepreneurship is the right path, self-assessment helps. Oh my God, why is this so hard to say? Okay, it sounded so robotic. By integrating their personal financial, family, and other personal goals into the mix. With another 37 with 37%, okay. With 37% also saying that they come across as more relatable.